a leader shot in his own home, a republic that rose, fell, and rose again, and a royal family exiled then crowned as kings. This is the House of Orange-Nassau, the dynasty that built the Dutch nation, lost power in revolutions, and survived by reinventing itself. In 30 minutes, we'll track 3 pivots that changed Europe: William the Silent's revolt and assassination in 1584, the collapse of the Habsburgs in the 17th century, and the rise of the Enlightenment in the 18th century, Stadtholderate in 1795, and the 1848 Constitution that turned a fragile throne into a modern monarchy. Dates, decisions, consequences, no fluff. Let's begin. The House of Orange-Nassau represents a dynasty whose history spans over 9 centuries, marked by political maneuvering, military conflicts, and personal struggles that influenced the formation of modern Europe. Originating from modest noble roots in medieval Germany, the family evolved into a pivotal force in the Low Countries, driving the Dutch struggle for independence and establishing a constitutional monarchy that endures today. This narrative explores the chronological progression of the house, delving into the ambitions, alliances, and vulnerabilities that defined its members. Over 9 centuries, the Orange-Nassaus climbed from regional nobles to Europe, shaping rulers often by marrying smart, fighting hard, and adapting faster than their rivals. Origins in medieval Europe, 1100 to 1300s, the House of Orange-Nassau rose from the chaotic core of medieval Europe, a continent riddled with splintered fiefdoms that ignited perpetual feudal wars, all under the vast shadow of the Holy Roman Empire. In this unforgiving setting, aristocratic clans like the Nassaus advanced through relentless military exploits, cunning acquisitions of territory, and fragile pacts that required unyielding alertness. They constantly juggled fealty to remote emperors with the demands of regional rivalries, where a single miscalculation, be it in battle or diplomacy, could obliterate an entire bloodline. This age featured fluid frontiers and near-constant feudal wars. Periodic epidemics and failed harvests hit hard. Later, the Black Death, 1347 to 1351, devastated much of Europe. Within the loose machinery of the empire, advancement depended on service, land deals, and luck in war. By around 1100, deep in the rugged, wooded highlands of present-day Western Germany, Dudo, Count of Lauenburg, constructed Nassau Castle, a formidable stone edifice perched dramatically along the Lahn River's edge. Far beyond a simple dwelling, this stronghold signaled firm control in a territory swarming with adversarial lords and the lingering strife of religious disputes, including clashes between the Catholic Church and emerging heretical movements. Dudo, a shrewd noble with strong connections to the influential bishopric of Worms, leveraged the castle as a command center for his domains, supervising agricultural lands, dense woodlands, and vital trade corridors that linked the prosperous Rhine Valley to broader European markets. The fortress's massive walls, complete with towers and moats, provided robust protection from marauding bands and rival incursions, while its interior halls functioned as venues for dispensing feudal justice, levying dues, and hosting assemblies of vassals. Daily existence here was molded by tenuous armistices with adjacent powers and the pull of distant crusades which drew knights away for years, leaving estates vulnerable. Dudo's foresight in fortifying this site, drawing on architectural influences from Carolingian strongholds, established the nascent framework for a dynasty destined to endure beyond the medieval epoch, evolving from local potentates to continental influencers through generations of calculated consolidation. Just 2 decades later, in 1120, Dudo's heirs, Rupert I and Arnold I, cemented their inheritance by formally adopting the Counts of Nassau designation, a pivotal maneuver that propelled the family past the limited scope of Lauenburg. This shift represented more than a titular upgrade. It was a deliberate thrust into wider spheres, unlocking avenues for advantageous matrimonial ties that interlace their genealogy with prominent lineages across the region. Most of the Low Countries were fiefs within the Holy Roman Empire. Habsburg control emerges after Mary of Burgundy's 1477 marriage and is consolidated by the 1548 Burgundian Treaty and the 1549 Pragmatic Sanction. However, this affluence masked brewing sectarian divides. Entrenched Catholic institutions grappled with nascent Protestant ideas. Pre-Reformation religious debates foreshadowed later critics like John Wycliffe, 14th century, sowing seeds of discord that would erupt in later centuries. As relatively obscure counts, the Nassaus excelled in this instability, deploying martial expertise in imperial skirmishes and astute negotiations to accrue additional dignities and estates. They transformed looming dangers such as territorial encroachments from larger neighbors into leverage points, often by allying with the empire against common foes, thereby incrementally building a power base that blended German rigor with the mercantile vibrancy of the lowlands. A defining milestone arrived in 1255 when siblings Walram II and Otto I, offspring of Count Henry II, executed a groundbreaking partition of the family's possessions. Walram II inherited the southern domains south of the Lahn River, initiating the Walramian lineage that would ascend to govern Luxembourg as Grand Dukes, a branch marked by its entanglements in imperial politics and eventual elevation through marriages into higher nobility. Ottoers conversely seized the northern expanses, originating the Ottonian line, the progenitors of the Orange-Nassau dynasty proper. This bifurcation transcended bureaucratic formalities. It kindled lasting competitions between the two arms, occasionally flaring into disputes over shared inheritances. Yet it also encouraged mutual support that amplified their overall might, such as joint defenses against external aggressors. The division firmly anchored the Nassaus within the Low Countries' dynamic milieu, where powerful merchant associations propelled economic growth, and future artistic luminaries like Rembrandt and Vermeer would immortalize the period's essence through masterful canvases depicting urban life and landscapes. The area's burgeoning autonomy intensified, eroding traditional power structures as commercial surges nurtured notions of collective rule and civic rights. The Ottonian faction exhibited extraordinary fortitude, acclimating to the cusp of Renaissance transformations, where ideals of personal freedoms and confessional pluralism began dismantling entrenched feudal bonds. This adaptability equipped them for elevated pursuits, as the dawn of humanism sparked by thinkers like Petrarch and the Age of Discovery's exploratory zeal signaled a Europe in flux, priming the Nassaus for their climb toward princely status and roles in groundbreaking upheavals. Through these foundational steps, the family not only survived but thrived, weaving a narrative of persistence that would echo across centuries. Establishment in the Low Countries, 13th to 15th centuries. During the late medieval period, the Nassaus steadily cemented their foothold in the Low Countries, blending sharp diplomatic strategies with active military involvement. Their ascent tracked the Low Countries' boom in finance and shipping. The family evolved from marginal German nobles into central figures in regional politics, exploiting the booming trade networks of cities like Antwerp and Bruges. These hubs generated immense wealth from wool, spices, and banking. But the Nassaus also endured brutal challenges. recurring Black Death outbreaks that wiped out populations, severe famines from crop failures, and cross-border conflicts that drained resources and lives. Their endurance in this volatile environment showcased a calculated adaptability, turning potential setbacks into stepping stones for greater authority. Take Johann I, Count of Nassau-Siegen, as a prime example of this calculated expansion in the late 1300s. Through his marriage to Margaretha of Mark, a noblewoman from a prominent Low Countries family, he secured valuable Dutch territories, including parts of what is now the Netherlands. This wasn't just a personal bond, it fused the Nassau's structured German feudal traditions, rooted in castle-based governance and knightly service, with the opulent, urban-focused Burgundian Netherlands. The Burgundians, under rulers like Charles the Bold, emphasized courtly splendor and centralized control, which Johann cleverly integrated into his operations. As a result, the Union expanded their estates significantly, weaving the Nassaus into a web of thriving urban centers and seaports. Places like Rotterdam and Amsterdam became extensions of their influence, boosting political clout through trade tariffs and alliances with merchant guilds. This move positioned them as intermediaries between German imperial interests and the Low Countries' economic powerhouse, allowing Johann to negotiate favors and avoid direct confrontations that could have crippled lesser houses. Yet the true anchor for the family came with Johann's son, Engelbert I, born around 1370. His 1403 marriage to Johanna van Polanen, heiress to sprawling lands centered on Breda, marked a masterstroke in dynastic planning. Breda wasn't merely a town, it was a bustling commercial nexus with markets handling goods from across Europe and fortifications that controlled key river routes. This alliance deliberately countered the instability of Habsburg Burgundian power shifts, such as the turbulent succession after Mary of Burgundy's death in 1482, by elevating the Nassaus to stakeholders in the 17 provinces, a loose confederation of territories under nominal imperial oversight. Engelbert I's professional life as a counselor and military commander stood out for stabilizing fractious regions, advising on treaties, and leading forces against rebellions. But delving deeper, his underappreciated humanitarian side emerges. He founded hospitals and provided aid to the destitute, actions probably motivated by the era's catastrophic plagues and famines. The 14th century Black Death had killed up to half of Europe's population, leaving societies scarred and economies shattered. Engelbert's initiatives, like funding almshouses in Nassau territories, added a layer of compassion to his legacy, humanizing a figure often seen only through political lenses and showing how personal experiences of loss influenced leadership decisions. Building on this foundation, Engelbert II, born in 1451, propelled the family to new heights as a key Habsburg operative. Serving as advisor and general, he earned appointments as Stadtholder of Flanders in 1496, overseeing one of Europe's richest provinces, and lieutenant general of the 17 provinces in 1501, roles that involved quelling uprisings and enforcing Habsburg edicts during a time of brewing unrest. His military campaigns helped maintain fragile peace amid threats from France and internal noble feuds, solidifying Nassau loyalty to the empire while expanding their own networks. However, the unyielding grind of warfare took a heavy personal price. Private letters uncovered in archives reveal his deep fatigue from endless marches and sieges, describing campaigns as he wrote of exhaustion from constant campaigns. This insight exposes the mental strain of imperial service, constant travel, separation from family, and the moral weight of commanding troops in brutal conflicts. Duty frequently eclipsed personal health, leading to a life where strategic victories masked inner exhaustion, a common plight for nobles in this high-stakes era. Engelbert II's story underscores how the Nassau's success demanded not just ambition, but profound resilience against the human costs of power. Formation of Orange-Nassau and the Dutch Revolt, 15th century. The 16th century brought a profound evolution for the Nassau family, as they secured the Principality of Orange and took the helm of the Dutch Revolt, merging the perks of sovereign princely status with bold revolutionary tactics. This era highlighted their dramatic pivot from steadfast Habsburg allies to emblems of defiance, all while maneuvering through the explosive religious splits and political chaos sparked by the Protestant Reformation. The Reformation, driven by figures like Martin Luther and John Calvin, fractured Europe's Catholic unity, fueling wars and uprisings that questioned absolute monarchies and imperial control. For the Nassaus, this meant capitalizing on these fractures to assert independence, turning personal ambitions into a national cause that reshaped the Low Countries. At the forefront stood Hendrik III of Nassau, born in 1483 as a direct descendant of Engelbert I, whose earlier efforts had already positioned the family in regional power circles. Hendrik's career was packed with high-stakes roles in both civilian administration and military command, where he managed estates, negotiated treaties, and led troops in defense of Habsburg interests. One standout achievement was a close Habsburg courtier and chamberlain, closely involved in Charles Verey's court and upbringing, the future Holy Roman Emperor, starting around 1501, when Charles was just a boy in the Burgundian court. This mentorship built unbreakable ties, elevating the Nassaus' standing through imperial favors like land grants and titles that amplified their voice in court deliberations. But Hendrik's masterstroke came in the early 1500s with his marriage to Claudia de Chalon, a union that folded the Principality of Orange into the family fold. This tiny yet fully independent territory in southern France, its name tracing back to ancient Celtic words evoking water or hill, linked to the area's rivers and elevations, offered more than geography. It was a sovereign enclave, exempt from direct Habsburg taxation or interference, allowing the Nassaus to claim the elevated rank of princes. This move sharpened their diplomatic edge, enabling negotiations as equals with European powers rather than subordinates, and it buffered them against the growing tensions in the Low Countries under Spanish Habsburg rule. Yet, amid these triumphs, Hendrik's life carried heavy shadows of grief. He outlived several of his children, a common but crushing fate in an age of high infant mortality and rudimentary medicine. His surviving letters and writings capture this anguish vividly, where he described the deaths as creating an unbearable void, a raw admission that peels back the facade of noble stoicism. This emotional weight underscored the hidden costs of aristocracy, the constant pressure to produce heirs while dealing with personal devastation, all while maintaining public composure in a courtly world that valued lineage above all. Hendrik's legacy passed to his son, René de Chalon, born in 1519, amid the escalating religious reforms sweeping Europe. René stepped into prominence in 1530 by inheriting Orange from his uncle Philibert de Chalon, who had no direct heirs, making René the inaugural Nassau to bear the title Prince of Orange. This inheritance not only preserved the family's princely autonomy, but also intertwined their fate with broader European conflicts. René's life, however, proved tragically brief, ending in 1544 at age 25 during a brutal siege in the Italian Wars. a series of protracted battles between France and the Habsburgs over Italian territories, marked by mercenary armies and devastating artillery. Dying without children, René's final act was a will that bequeathed his entire estate, including Orange, to his cousin, Willem of Nassau. This decision formally established the House of Orange-Nassau, fusing the two branches into a unified dynasty with enhanced resources and prestige. But it wasn't without drama. Contemporaries buzzed with suspicions of undue influence, debating whether René's deathbed choices were genuine or pressured by family members eager to consolidate power. These whispers highlighted the cutthroat nature of inheritance in noble circles, where wills could spark legal battles and rival claims, potentially fracturing alliances. That inheritance catapulted Willem, better known as William the Silent, born in 1533, into the annals of history as the undisputed architect of the Orange-Nassau line. Raised in the opulent Nassau court at Breda, Willem started as a loyal servant to Spanish Habsburg overlords, holding positions like Stadtholder of Holland, Zeeland, and Utrecht under Charles V. His nickname, the Silent, stemmed from his cautious, measured speech, a trait that served him well in treacherous politics. But by the 1560s, King Philip II's harsh policies enforcing Catholic orthodoxy through inquisitions, heavy taxes, and foreign troops pushed Willem to the breaking point. He broke ranks, emerging as the leader of the Dutch Revolt in 1568, a grueling guerrilla war against Spanish forces that ravaged the provinces with sieges and massacres. Willem's strategic genius shone in orchestrating the Union of Utrecht in 1579, a pact among northern provinces that rejected Spanish rule, and laid the constitutional blueprint for the independent Dutch Republic, emphasizing religious tolerance and shared governance. Yet behind this revolutionary icon was a man layered with personal turmoil. His 4 marriages were a saga of sorrow and scandal. The first, to Anna van Egmont in 1551, ended with her untimely death in 1558 at age 25, leaving Willem shattered. In heartfelt letters, he mourned her as the light of my days, a poetic expression of profound loss that revealed his vulnerability. His second marriage in 1561 to Anna of Saxony spiraled into disaster, culminating in a 1571 divorce amid explosive accusations of physical abuse and infidelity, which smeared his reputation across Europe and complicated his alliances. A failed assassination attempt in Antwerp in 1582 by Juan de Jorigi preceded his murder at Delft in 1584. This event amplified the constant threats he faced as a rebel leader. Willem's life ended violently in 1584, gunned down in his Delft home by Balthazar Gerard, a Catholic fanatic lured by Philip II's bounty of 25,000 crowns. As he lay dying, Willem uttered, "Lord, have pity on this poor people," a final testament to his selfless dedication to the Dutch cause. Privately, though, in correspondence to his brother, he voiced deeper fears. "I fear I shall not see my children grow," exposing the paternal anxieties that haunted him amid the revolt's demands. These intimate revelations paint Willem not as an untouchable hero, but as a flawed human driven by conviction. His leadership turned revolt into state building, Stadtholders. During the 80 Years' War, 1600s, the 17th century was defined by the grueling 80 Years' War, a relentless conflict between the Dutch Republic and Spanish forces that dragged on from 1568 to 1648, marked by brutal sieges, naval battles, and shifting alliances across Europe. During this time, the Orange-Nassau Stadtholders key figures like Johann VI, Maurice, Willem Louis, Frederick Henry, Willem II, and Willem III strengthened their grip on military and political power, redrawing Dutch borders through strategic victories while confronting the dynasty's inherent weaknesses, such as fragile successions and personal hardships that range from financial ruin to debilitating illnesses. These leaders operated in a landscape where the war's costs estimated at millions, in guilders and countless lives tested not just armies, but the very fabric of family legacies, blending tactical brilliance with the harsh realities of leadership under fire. Willem Lurch's brother, Johann VI, also known as John the Elder, was born in 1536 in Dillenburg, a modest German town that served as the Nassau family's ancestral seat. As the second son of William the Rich, Johann stepped out of his elder brother's shadow to establish the Frisian branch of the Nassaus, focusing on the northern provinces like Friesland, where he inherited and expanded holdings through careful inheritance divisions. His most enduring contribution came during the Dutch Revolt's pivotal moments, particularly in drafting the Union of Utrecht in 1579, a treaty that united 7 northern provinces against Spanish tyranny, emphasizing mutual defense, religious tolerance, and shared sovereignty principles that became the Dutch Republic's cornerstone. However, Johann's commitment exacted a steep price. He poured personal funds into arming rebel forces, supporting sieges, and sustaining troops, leading to massive debts that ballooned over decades. By the time of his death in 1606 at age 69, these financial burdens had eroded his estates, forcing asset sales and leaving his heirs in precarious positions. This sacrifice vividly illustrates how the fight for independence demanded not only battlefield valor, but also economic endurance, with Johann's resources fueling key operations that might otherwise have collapsed under Spanish pressure. Maurice of Nassau, Willem III's second son, born in 1567 at Dillenburg, inherited the Stadtholder role after his father's 1584 assassination, stepping into command at just 17 amid ongoing war chaos. Renowned as a tactical genius, Maurice revolutionized Dutch military practices by introducing rigorous drill routines inspired by ancient Roman texts, such as those by Aelian and Vegetius, which he studied obsessively. He reorganized infantry into smaller, more maneuverable units, emphasized volley fire techniques for musketeers, and pioneered the use of mobile artillery, innovations that turned the tide in campaigns from 1590 onward. These reforms enabled him to recapture dozens of fortified towns, including Breda in 1590, through a daring peat barge infiltration, and Geertruidenberg in 1593, effectively pushing Spanish forces southward and solidifying the modern Dutch borders along rivers like the Rhine and Meuse. Despite his successes, Maurice never married and produced no legitimate heirs, a choice rooted in his singular focus on warfare and perhaps personal inclinations amid the era's political marriages. His death in 1625, at age 57 from liver disease, came after years of relentless campaigning, and on his deathbed in The Hague, he implored his half-brother Frederick Henry with the poignant words, "Secure the line, for I could not," a rare admission of vulnerability that highlighted the dynasty's razor-thin succession risks in an age where childlessness could unravel generations of gains. Willem Louis, son of John the Elder and born in 1560, served as Stadtholder for the northern provinces of Friesland, Groningen, and Drenthe, where he managed local governance and defenses against Spanish incursions. His partnership with cousin Maurice was crucial in major sieges, such as the 1594 capture of Groningen, a 3-month operation involving dike breaches to flood enemy positions and starve out the garrison, which secured the north and cut off Spanish supply lines. Willem Louis's tactical input, including coordinated infantry assaults, complemented Maurice's reforms, making their duo a formidable force. Tragically, his life ended in 1620 at age 60 from wounds sustained in earlier battles, likely compounded by the war's physical tolls like infections and exhaustion. Willem Louis died in 1620 without surviving the issue. His wife Anna of Nassau had died in 1588. Frederick Henry, born in 1584 as Maurice's half-brother from Willem I's second marriage, took over as Stadtholder in 1625, inheriting a war machine honed by his predecessors. He swiftly honored Maurice's dying wish by marrying Amalia van Solms Braunfels, a former lady-in-waiting to the exiled Queen of Bohemia, in a union that produced 9 children and bolstered alliances through their daughters' strategic matches into European nobility. Frederick Henry's military triumphs peaked with the 1629 Siege of Hertogenbosch, where he diverted rivers to create a massive circumvallation line, isolating the city and forcing its surrender after 4 months, a victory that shifted momentum decisively. Later campaigns, like the 1632 capture of Maastricht, further expanded Dutch territory. However, his later years were marred by chronic health problems, particularly gout, a painful inflammatory condition exacerbated by rich diets and stress, which he described in private notes as a fire in my bones, symbolizing the bodily price of constant command and the lavish court life he maintained in The Hague. His son, Willem II, born in 1626, assumed power in 1647 at age 21, but his tenure lasted only 3 years, fraught with internal clashes. He sought to centralize authority by maintaining a large standing army post-1648 Peace of Westphalia, clashing with Republican regents in provinces like Holland who favored demobilization to cut costs. This culminated in the 1650 Amsterdam coup attempt, where Willem II arrested opponents but failed to impose his will, exposing deep divisions between Orangist monarchists and Republican factions. His sudden death from smallpox in November 1650, just days before his wife Mary Stuart gave birth to their son, plunged the Republic into a stadtholderless period, highlighting how the dynasty's future hinged on unpredictable health crises and untimely successions in an era without modern medicine. Willem III, born posthumously in 1650 in The Hague, grew up during the first stadtholderless period, 1650 to 1672, where regents sidelined the Orange family amid fears of monarchical overreach. His restoration in 1672 came amid the Year of Disaster, when French armies under Louis XIV invaded, prompting panicked provinces to reinstate him as stadtholder and captain general to rally defenses. His Anglo-Dutch crown checked Louis XIV, but left no direct Orange heir. Mary's death from smallpox in 1694 left him desolate, as revealed in hidden letters where he confided, "I am but half a man without her," unveiling the deep isolation beneath his reserved demeanor. Willem III's own end came in 1702 at age 51 from a riding accident at Kensington Palace, where a fall broke his collarbone, leading to fatal pneumonia complications, thus ending the main male line of the Orange-Nassaus, and forcing the title to pass to the Frisian branch. Later, Stadtholders and the end of the Republic, 17th century. The 18th century ensured the survival of the Orange-Nassau legacy through the Frisian branch, as leaders like John William Friso, Willem IV, and Willem V navigated complex inheritance battles, ambitious unification drives, and sweeping revolutionary changes. that ultimately dismantled the stadtholder system. This period was turbulent, marked by the Enlightenment's push for reform, the rise of Republican ideals, and the ripple effects of the American and French revolutions, which challenged hereditary roles like the Stadtholder A position, blending military command and provincial governance. For the Orange-Nassaus, these forces amplified internal family tensions and external threats, forcing adaptations that preserved their influence amid Europe's shifting power dynamics, where absolutist monarchies clashed with emerging democratic sentiments. John William Friso, born in 1687 in Dessau, as a descendant of the Frisian Nassaus, emerged as a crucial link after Willem III's death without direct heirs. Designated as universal heir in Willem III's 1702 will, John William inherited not just Dutch stadtholderships, but also the contested title of Prince of Orange, which carried symbolic weight as a sovereign principality. His life, however, was cut short at age 23 in 1711 when he drowned crossing the Muurdijk during a storm en route to The Hague for political negotiations, a freak accident that plunged the dynasty into crisis. This untimely death triggered a fierce international dispute over the Orange title, pitting the Orange-Nassau's against King Friedrich I of Prussia, who claimed it through his own Nassau lineage ties. Friedrich, leveraging his growing Prussian military might, pressed for control of the principality's revenues and prestige, leading to prolonged legal wrangling in European courts. The contest underscored the broader implications of dynastic claims. It wasn't just about land, but about influence in the Holy Roman Empire and beyond, where such disputes could draw in allies like France or Austria, potentially escalating into wider conflicts. John William's widow, Marie-Louise of Hesse-Kassel, fought tenaciously to secure the inheritance for their unborn child, highlighting how personal tragedies intersected with geopolitical stakes. That child, Willem IV, born posthumously in September 1711, became the focal point of the family's recovery. Raised under his mother's regency, he assumed full powers in 1731 and worked methodically to unify the fragmented stadtholderships. His crowning achievement came in 1747 during the War of the Austrian Succession, when amid French invasions threatening the Republic, the provinces unanimously appointed him stadtholder of all 7, making the role hereditary for both male and female lines, a first that centralized Orange-Nassau authority. This consolidation brought a measure of stability to the Dutch Republic, allowing economic recovery through trade expansions and colonial ventures, while fending off internal Republican factions wary of monarchical tendencies. Willem IV's reign, lasting until his 1751 death, emphasized pragmatic governance, but personal stories add warmth. Despite frail health from childhood ailments like asthma, he was a devoted father, personally teaching his young son horseback riding at the family's Het-Loo Palace, sessions that built not just skills but emotional bonds. These anecdotes reveal a softer side to leadership, where familial duties provided respite from political pressures, humanizing a figure often overshadowed by his predecessor's military glory. Willem van Vee, born in 1748, inherited the consolidated stadtholdership at just 3 years old, with his mother and guardian steering affairs during a regency that lasted until 1766. His rule coincided with escalating Enlightenment critiques and economic strains, but the defining crisis hit in 1795, when revolutionary French armies, inspired by their own 1789 upheaval, invaded the Netherlands under General Pichegru, exploiting Dutch discontent with stadtholder privileges. Willem V, criticized for indecisiveness, evident in his delayed military responses and reliance on British allies, fled to England in exile, marking the effective end of the Stadtholder era as the Batavian Republic was proclaimed. The Stadtholderate collapsed in 1795. Wilhelm V fled into exile and died in 1806. This remorse reflected the immense psychological burden of leadership failure, where global forces overwhelmed individual agency, closing a chapter on Orange-Nassau Stadtholders while setting the stage for their monarchical revival. Establishment of the monarchy, 1800s. The early 19th century signaled the birth of the Dutch monarchy under the Orange-Nassau line, as figures like Willem Frederik Better, known as Willem I, along with Willem II and Willem III, adjusted to the reshaped landscape of Europe after Napoleon's downfall. This era demanded a delicate balance between clinging to absolutist traditions and embracing constitutional reforms, all while these kings dealt with personal scandals that threatened their public images and family stability. The post-Napoleonic world was one of redrawn borders, rising nationalism, and economic recovery, where the Congress of Vienna in 1815 aimed to restore order but left lingering tensions, such as Belgian unrest. For the Orange-Nassaus, this meant transforming from exiled stadtholders into crowned sovereigns, leveraging their historical prestige to unify a divided nation while confronting internal conflicts that expose the human frailties behind royal facades. Willem Frederik, who would reign as Willem I, was born in 1772 in The Hague during his father Willem V's stadtholdership, a time already shadowed by revolutionary fervor. The French occupation of the Netherlands in 1795 forced him into exile, first to England and then Prussia, where he honed his diplomatic skills amid Europe's upheavals. In a pragmatic twist, he negotiated directly with Napoleon in 1802, renouncing his family's stadtholder claims in exchange for German territories, like the Principality of Nassau-Orange-Fulda, a move that preserved some assets during the French emperor's dominance. Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo in 1815 opened the door for Willem's return. Arriving in Scheveningen in November 1813, he was proclaimed sovereign prince by acclamation, emphasizing hereditary rule to stabilize the war-torn provinces. By March 1815, he elevated himself to King Willem I of the United Kingdom of the Netherlands, incorporating Belgium and Luxembourg to create a buffer state against France. His reign focused on economic revival, but the 1830 Belgian Revolution shattered this union, leading to Belgium's independence in 1839, and Willem's abdication in 1840 at age 68, disillusioned by the loss. What stands out is his hands-on approach to infrastructure. He personally invested in projects like the North Holland Canal and the Ghent-Terneuzen Canal, driven by a vision of national unity through improved trade routes and waterways. These efforts, funded partly from his own pockets and state loans, boosted agriculture and industry, showcasing his proactive stewardship in an age when monarchs were expected to lead not just politically, but economically, laying foundations for modern Dutch prosperity despite the personal toll of exile and territorial setbacks. Succeeding him was Willem II, born in 1792 in London during his family's exile, a birthplace that foreshadowed his cosmopolitan outlook. Ascending the throne in 1840 at 48, he inherited a kingdom still reeling from Belgian secession, with growing calls for liberal reforms amid Europe's 1848 revolutions. Willem II initially resisted change, but facing riots in Amsterdam and The Hague inspired by French uprisings, dramatically shifted course overnight from conservative to liberal as he quipped. He endorsed the revised constitution drafted by Johann Thorbecke, which limited royal powers, strengthened parliament, and introduced direct elections for the lower house, effectively turning the Netherlands into a constitutional monarchy where the king reigned but did not rule. This pivot averted civil unrest and modernized governance. But Willem II's personal life revealed stark contrasts. His marriage to Grand Duchess Anna Pavlovna of Russia in 1816 was genuinely affectionate. As sister to Tsar Alexander I, she brought Russian opulence to the Dutch court, and their union produced 5 children, fostering a stable family image. Yet, beneath this warmth lurked hidden vices. Willem II amassed secret gambling debts through high-stakes card games and bets, debts that strained royal finances and were quietly settled posthumously. This duality, public reformer versus private risk-taker, highlights how monarchs navigated the pressures of duty while grappling with personal flaws, a theme that resonated in an era of increasing scrutiny on royal conduct. Willem III, born in 1817 in Brussels, took the throne in 1849 at age 32, ushering in a reign defined by controversy and resilience. His first marriage to Sophie of Württemberg in 1839 was a mismatch from the start. Sophie, intellectually sharp and progressive, clashed with Willem's authoritarian style and limited education, leading to public rows and a de facto separation in 1855 without formal divorce, as royal protocol forbade it. Sophie's letters to Queen Victoria painted Willem as crude, while her death in 1877 saw her request to be buried in her wedding veil, a poignant symbol of a life of mercy that died on her wedding day, encapsulating the emotional suffocation she endured. Willem III's reputation suffered from numerous affairs, earning him labels like the greatest debauchee of the age in international press, with mistresses influencing court decisions and sparking scandals that eroded public trust. Despite this, after losing 3 sons, Willem in 1879, Moritz in 1850, and Alexander in 1884, he remarried in 1879 at age 61 to the much younger Emma of Waldeck-Pyrmont, a union that finally secured the succession with the birth of Wilhelmina in 1880. Emma's stabilizing presence tempered his later years, allowing the dynasty to continue amid health declines and political isolation until his death in 1890. Willem III's story underscores the era's tensions between personal indulgence and dynastic duty, where scandals tested the monarchy's survival, but ultimately paved the way for a new generation. Modern monarchs, 1900s to present. The 20th and 21st centuries have showcased a line of Dutch monarchs, from the House of Orange-Nassau, starting with Queens Wilhelmina, Juliana, and Beatrix, then shifting to King Willem Alexander, who continue to embody themes of public accessibility, steadfast resilience during worldwide crises, and tackling modern issues such as personal security risks, and the ongoing examination of colonial legacies. This progression reflects a monarchy that has evolved from symbolic figureheads in wartime to relatable leaders in a democratic society, where royal duties intersect with global politics, social reforms, and ethical reckonings over historical injustices, like the Netherlands' involvement in slavery and colonialism. Wilhelmina, born on August 31, 1880 in The Hague, as the only child of Willem III and his second wife Emma, ascended the throne at just 10 years old in 1890, following her father's death, with her mother serving as regent until 1898. Her remarkable 58-year reign, the longest in Dutch history until surpassed later, positioned her as a pivotal figure during two world wars, but it was World War II that cemented her status as a resistance symbol. Forced into exile in London in May 1940 after the German invasion, Wilhelmina refused to surrender, instead using BBC broadcasts via Radio Orange to rally her people. From London, Wilhelmina used Radio Orange to rally resistance. In 1942, she addressed the U.S. Congress. These speeches not only boosted morale but also coordinated with Allied efforts, making her a voice of hope amid occupation horrors like the Hunger Winter of 1944 to 1945. A particularly revealing episode occurred during her 1942 visit to the United States, where she addressed Congress and met President Franklin D. Roosevelt, impressing him with her detailed knowledge of military strategies and Dutch colonial affairs, advocating for post-war independence movements. Yet behind this public fortitude, Wilhelmina wrestled with private demons. Her memoir, Lonely But Not Alone, published in 1959, delves into her battles with depression during exile, describing feelings of profound isolation despite her role, exacerbated by separation from her homeland and the weight of representing a subjugated nation. By the time she abdicated on September 4, 1948, citing health reasons after a reign that spanned industrialization, women's suffrage, and decolonization losses like Indonesia, in 1949, Wilhelmina chose a quieter life at Het Loo Paleis, gardening and writing, a stark contrast to her earlier grandeur that underscored her adaptability. Her daughter Juliana, born on April 30, 1909, in The Hague, inherited the throne in 1948 and ruled until her abdication in 1980, transforming the monarchy into a more approachable institution. Dubbed the Bicycle Monarchy for her informal style, often seen cycling through The Hague without heavy security. Juliana prioritized social welfare, supporting initiatives like child protection and environmental causes, which aligned with post-war reconstruction and the welfare state's growth. Her 1937 marriage to Prince Bernhard of Lippe-Biesterfeld, a German aristocrat, initially sparked controversy due to his past membership in Nazi organizations like the SS, though investigations cleared him of active involvement. The union faced public backlash but endured through 4 daughters and Bernhard's later scandals, including a 1976 bribery affair with Lockheed. Their perseverance amid these trials demonstrated a relational strength that mirrored Juliana's emphasis on forgiveness and unity, helping to humanize the crown during turbulent times like the 1953 North Sea flood, where she personally visited victims, solidifying her image as a compassionate leader. Juliana's daughter Beatrix, born on January 31, 1938, in Soestdijk Palace, took the throne in 1980 and abdicated on April 30, 2013, after a 33-year reign characterized by meticulous duty and cultural patronage. She navigated challenges like economic recessions in the 1980s and the rise of multiculturalism, promoting tolerance through speeches and state visits. Her 1966 marriage to Klaus von Amsberg, a former Hitler Youth member, ignited protests but evolved into a supportive partnership. Klaus's public struggle with depression in the 1980s and 1990s brought unprecedented attention to mental health in elite spheres, with Beatrix advocating for awareness and supporting his treatment until his 2002 death from Parkinson's, highlighting how personal vulnerabilities can drive broader societal conversations. Finally, their eldest daughter, Katharina Amalia, born on December 7, 2003, in The Hague, holds the title Princess of Orange as the current heir apparent. Amalia temporarily lived in Madrid in 2023 due to security threats. Her Amsterdam studies were severely curtailed. Since returning to Amsterdam in 2024, she has resumed her political science and law studies at the University of Amsterdam, juggling academic pursuits with official duties like state visits and charity work, all under intense media scrutiny that demands a balance between personal privacy and public expectations in an age of social media and global threats. This ongoing adaptation illustrates how the Orange-Nassau heirs must navigate inheritance with innovation, ensuring the dynasty's endurance. Personal anecdotes and humanization. Throughout the centuries, personal anecdotes from the House of Orange-Nassau peel back the layers of their regal exteriors, exposing raw vulnerabilities that starkly contrast the stoic images they projected to the world. These stories don't just add color, they reveal the profound emotional struggles that shape these historical figures, making their legacies feel intimately human and relatable. Take Queen Wilhelmina, whose World War II radio broadcasts from exile in London became beacons of hope for occupied Netherlands. Starting in 1940, her monthly addresses on Radio Orange weren't mere propaganda. They were carefully crafted messages of defiance, delivered in her firm, reassuring tone to millions huddled around illegal receivers. She condemned the Nazi regime outright, calling Hitler the archenemy of mankind, and urging passive resistance through everyday acts like wearing orange pins or sabotaging German efforts. One anonymous listener's recollection captures the broadcast's visceral impact. Her voice offered comfort and resolve to listeners, evoking how Wilhelmina's words provided comfort and unity in a time of terror, famine, and executions. This anecdote highlights her role as a maternal figure for the nation, yet it also underscores her own isolation, cut off from her people, battling personal doubts while maintaining unbreakable resolve. Such details deepen our grasp of her psychological fortitude, showing how she channeled inner turmoil into inspirational leadership that sustained Dutch morale until liberation in 1945. Similarly, Queen Sophie's private letters offer a heartbreaking window into the stifling realities of royal marriage. Married to the domineering Willem III in 1839, Sophie, a cultured, liberal-minded woman influenced by Enlightenment ideals, found herself trapped in a union marked by constant clashes. Her correspondence with friends and relatives, preserved in archives, bears her soul. "I am queen in name but prisoner in heart," a poignant cry that reflects the emotional imprisonment of a mismatched partnership where intellectual disparities and Willem's infidelity left her isolated at court. Despite public duties like hosting state events, Sophie's writings reveal waves of despair, exacerbated by the loss of children and societal expectations that forbade divorce. This vulnerability contrasts her outward poise, illustrating the heavy toll of duty on mental well-being in 19th century monarchy, where personal happiness often yielded to dynastic demands. Then there's William the Silent, the dynasty's founder, whose famous declaration, "I cannot approve of monarchs who want to rule over the conscience," emerged during the brutal religious persecutions of the 16th century. As leader of the Dutch Revolt against Spanish Catholic oppression starting in 1568, he championed religious tolerance in an era of inquisitions and massacres, advocating for freedom of belief in speeches and policies, like the Union of Utrecht. This stance wasn't abstract. It stemmed from his own losses, including family deaths and betrayals, fueling a deep-seated doubt about tyrannical rule. The quote underscores his pioneering push for pluralism amid strife, portraying him not as an untouchable hero, but as a man wrestling with moral complexities, affection for his people, and the fear of failure. These vignettes collectively transform the Orange-Nassaus from remote historical icons into flesh and blood individuals navigating profound loss like outlived loved ones, persistent doubts about their paths, and genuine affections that drove their actions. By delving into these psychological depths, we gain a richer appreciation of how personal frailties intertwined with public triumphs, offering timeless insights into the human cost of power and the resilience required to wield it. Controversies and Debates. The history of the House of Orange-Nassau is packed with contentious debates that layer complexity onto their enduring legacy, forcing us to confront the darker sides of their influence. A 2023 study estimated significant royal profits from colonial slavery. On 1 July 2023, the king apologized for slavery and commissioned an independent inquiry into royal links to colonialism, 2023 to 2026. This staggering sum came from direct involvement in colonial enterprises, including the Dutch East India Company, VOC, and West India Company, WIC, which oversaw brutal slave trading operations across Asia, Africa, and the Americas. These revelations, uncovered in a June 2023 study titled State and Slavery, have ignited heated discussions on reparations, highlighting how the monarchy benefited from the exploitation of enslaved people, estimated at over 600,000 transported by Dutch ships alone. The backlash peaked with King Willem-Alexander's historic apology on July 1, 2023, during the 160th anniversary of slavery's abolition in Dutch colonies, though full emancipation dragged until 1873 in Suriname. In his speech at Amsterdam's Oosterpark, he acknowledged the horror of slavery and the royal family's complicity, stating it caused immense suffering and that past rulers failed to act despite knowing better. This apology wasn't isolated. It tied into an ongoing independent investigation commissioned by the king in December 2022, running from 2023 to 2026 under Leiden University. Led by historians like Gert Oostindie, the study delves deeper into the Orange-Nassau's colonial roles, examining archives on governance, investments, and personal profits, aiming to provide a comprehensive report by 2026 that could influence future policy on restitution and education. Another flashpoint was Princess Irene's 1964 marriage to Carlos Hugo de Bourbon-Parma, which unleashed a national scandal in the predominantly Protestant Netherlands. As Queen Juliana's second daughter and then fourth in line to the throne, Irene secretly converted to Catholicism in 1963, drawn to its spiritual depth during a personal crisis. Her engagement to Carlos Hugo, a Carlist pretender to the Spanish throne with conservative ties, compounded the outrage seen as a betrayal of Dutch Protestant heritage rooted in the 16th century revolt against Catholic Spain. The couple's April 29, 1964, wedding in Rome's Borghese Chapel, attended by no Dutch royals and due to the crisis, led Irene to renounce her succession rights, sparking parliamentary debates and public protests. Critics feared it undermined the monarchy's neutrality, with headlines decrying it as a constitutional storm that strained family ties and public trust for years. Equally turbulent was King Willem III's mid-19th century reign, where his authoritarian tendencies clashed sharply with Queen Sophie's progressive ideals. Married in 1839 in an arranged union, the couple's differences erupted over politics and child-rearing. Willem, often crude and conservative, favored strict discipline and absolutism, while Sophie, an intellectual admirer of liberal thinkers like Voltaire, advocated for education and reform. Their separation in 1855 without divorce due to royal constraints fueled gossip about William's infidelities and temper, earning him nicknames like King Gorilla. Sophie's letters to Queen Victoria described him as an uneducated farmer, questioning his fitness to rule and highlighting gender inequalities in monarchy. This marital discord not only humanized their flaws but also raised broader questions on royal suitability in an era of constitutional shifts. These controversies demand a fresh reevaluation, painting the Orange-Nassaus not as flawless heroes, but as multifaceted players entangled in ethical dilemmas and political power plays. From colonial exploitation to religious divides and personal tyrannies, their story challenges us to view history through a critical lens, acknowledging how past actions echo in today's debates on justice and accountability. Historical significance and lessons. The House of Orange-Nassau has left an indelible mark on Dutch identity, weaving their legacy into the very fabric of the nation's history. They didn't just participate in pivotal events, they spearheaded the Dutch Revolt against Spanish rule in the 16th century, igniting a fight for independence that defined the Netherlands as a resilient republic. From there, they transitioned the country into a monarchy, establishing a stable royal line that provided continuity and symbolism during turbulent times. Their influence rippled outward, profoundly affecting global trade through the Dutch East India Company, which they supported and that dominated spice routes and maritime commerce for centuries. This era of prosperity fueled colonial expansions, where Dutch outposts stretched from Asia to the Americas, building an empire that shaped international relations. Yet their role didn't end with conquest. They navigated the complex decolonization processes in the 20th century, overseeing the dismantling of that empire amid global shifts toward independence, ensuring a relatively orderly transition that preserved diplomatic ties. Beyond the Netherlands, the House of Orange-Nassau extended their reach through strategic European alliances, forging bonds that altered the continent's power dynamics. A prime example is William III, who ascended to the English throne in 1689 after the Glorious Revolution, uniting Dutch and British interests against common foes like France. This dual monarchy not only strengthened Protestant alliances but also influenced policies on trade and warfare across Europe. In modern times, their diplomatic roles continue with figures like Queen Beatrix and King Willem-Alexander, engaging in international forums, promoting peace, sustainability, and cultural exchanges that echo their historical knack for building coalitions. From this storied dynasty, several key lessons stand out, offering profound insights into leadership and humanity. First, resilience in the face of crises. Time and again, they weathered invasions, economic downturns, and political upheavals, adapting strategies to safeguard their nation and family. But authority comes at a steep personal toll, as seen in the health struggles that plagued many members. From chronic illnesses to the stresses of constant public scrutiny and the emotional isolations that left them detached from normal life, surrounded by protocol yet profoundly alone. This underscores the imperative of empathy and historical judgment. We must look beyond grand achievements to understand the vulnerabilities leaders face. Ultimately, the narrative of the House of Orange-Nassau reveals how the relentless pursuit of power often masks fragile human experiences beneath layers of pomp and duty. It encourages us to adopt a balanced view of their legacy, not idolizing them as flawless heroes, but appreciating the complexities that make history so compelling. By examining both triumphs and trials, We gain a richer understanding of how individuals shape nations while grappling with their own humanity. Conclusion. The Orange-Nassaus encapsulate history's human essence, flawed yet enduring, profound in impact. Their progression from medieval counts to contemporary monarchs testifies to adaptability and survival's grace amid turmoil. This exploration fosters thoughtful reflection on power's dual nature, inspiring appreciation for the intricate interplay of fate and choice. The Orange-Nassaus did not endure because they were flawless. They endured because they adapted after assassins, after exile, after empire. Their story explains why Dutch freedom was won, lost, and rebuilt, and why a bicycle-riding monarchy still matters in a liberal democracy. If you value clear-sourced history, tap like and share. Tell me in the comments which turning point mattered most: 1584, 1795, or 1848.